Welcome, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your producer and host of the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. This is your motivational podcast of people's incredible journeys. Oh, yeah, let's do this. Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I would love to welcome John Lawyer. From 12 years desert combat zones to a battle within, John Lawyer transformed from soldier to spiritual seeker. He is the co-founder of Kishar, a nonprofit online spiritual community where people share their journeys and explore their own unique spiritual path. John is an Omnist and believes in the validity of great human thought from around the world and across time. He is a higher purpose and transformational coach, and John offers individual spiritual guidance as part of the Kishar Spiritual Community. I love the alignment. Welcome to A Little Less Fear podcast, John.
Thank you, Leno. I appreciate it, and I love your energy. You have such great energy.
Oh, well, thanks. I appreciate, why? Because I love what I do. And I really hope that, and I appreciate you telling me this because my energy comes from following my joy and my passions. And I feel that a lot of people, when they struggle to find life purpose, a lot of the times what they do is they concentrate on material or what they think others should be doing rather than really looking within and seeing, well, what brings me joy? And I love connecting people. I love connecting with you, and I love connecting with different energies. And I feel that the more you are true to your joy, your own personal fulfillment, the closer in alignment you're going to come to your life purpose. That is your life purpose. If joy is what's bringing you happiness, and keep following that path.
Amen is all I can say to that. That's 100%.
So, John, I'm really curious about your journey here. This is really amazing. When I read your profile, I was like, I would love to know your story. A soldier from war to inner peace. I mean, that's almost unheard of, because usually war comes with PTSD and stress and homelessness and all kinds of other stuff, addiction. But I feel that you have found a different journey for yourself, and I'm really curious to know how all of this began.
Sure. Yeah, there's been some of that for me as well before I kind of found my way. But yeah, for me, I came from a small town in central Oklahoma, and I kind of knew that college wasn't for me. I wanted to go see the world. Lawrence of Arabia had always kind of spoken to me, the movie as a kid.
Oh, that's a great movie, and it's a fantastic soundtrack too, by the way.
Yeah, it's a great soundtrack. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that soundtrack.
Yeah, and so I kind of was in love with the desert, and I kind of always been called to the desert, and so I wanted to go do that, and I wanted to do intelligence. I've been fascinated with like Tom Clancy and Jack Ryan, and so I joined the U.S. Army, and I enlisted as a counterintelligence special agent, and went to basic training, went to go get my job training at Fort Huachuca in southern Arizona for intelligence and counterintelligence. And by the time I got to my permanent duty station, my first posting after training, it was at Fort Gordon, Georgia, and that was only 6 months before 9/11 happened. So I had kind of this magical thing happened. I got to this unit, and they were going to put me somewhere, and then I talked to my commanding officer, and he's like, "Why'd you join the Army?" I'm like, "Well, I wanted to do counterterrorism." And he's like, "We actually have a real world office that does counterterrorism here." So they put me in this top secret facility, and I was doing real world stuff. And I was actually in that facility when, the morning of 9/11. And, I kind of knew my whole life had changed. I knew that my kind of brothers and sisters in arms, like all my friends, like all our whole lives have changed. And they did.
You mean while you were doing while you were at the desert, you knew at the moment, or once 9/11 hit, you knew that things changed?
Yeah. Well, I was in Georgia still when 9/11 happened in this office and working. And when the towers came down, I realized we were going to be at war, and kind of my life would never be the same. So yeah, definitely. It had a definite profound impact that morning, the day of.
And so what type of impact did it have on you? What did you think at that moment? How did you feel?
That's a really good question. For me, I I was sad, but obviously the sadness of it all kind of hit home because at the time we didn't know how many people had been lost, and it's a tragic thing, right? Um, I had this odd thought too. It was a horrific thought, but I was like, I've wanted to do this job, and now I'm always going to be able to do this job. Like I knew that I would never want for work ever again in my life because I knew that the whole world had just changed. And
Right.
I wasn't happy about it. It was this tragic thought. It was like this
That is a tragic
kind of
thought.
horrible thought, right? Um, and and then there was like the thought of what's going to happen to me, like from an individual perspective, like where am I going to end up? And um, so it was just a lot of stuff. I talked to my dad later that day after I got off work, and he was a truck driver at the time, and trucks weren't moving. It's not that just planes were stopped; trucks weren't even moving on the road. Um,
Right.
and he said, he was a boomer. He was a baby boomer. He lived through the '60s and Vietnam and all that. And he told me, he's like, I think this is going to be more impactful to our country than Vietnam. And at the time, having grown up in the '80s and '90s, and Vietnam was kind of fresh and this big thing, that people would talk about, that was kind of hard for me to kind of wrap my head around that this would be bigger than that. I think that's true, though. I think it did end up being bigger than Vietnam. It changed the whole world, right?
Oh, definitely.
And so, so anyway, um, I would end up in Kuwait for 2.5 years. That was half my enlistment. I got out of the army and continued to do the same thing that I had done in the army as a civilian, working for the military. Went to Baghdad for 18 months. I ended up doing 6.5 years in Kandahar, Afghanistan. So about 12 years out of the first 15 years of my
Wow.
adult life, I was in the desert. I was in combat zones. I was working 110 hours a week, um, completely dedicated to my job. I was, I was, I didn't really know anything other than work. I didn't really know anything other than like doing intelligence counterterrorism work. And so I was consumed by it. And like we were operating against terrorists and extremists, right?
Right.
And they're supposed to be quote unquote the enemy. And when I first started, I believed in what we were doing, and I was young and not as I didn't have as much wisdom, so I saw them as the enemy. As time went on, I saw them as the enemy way less because I felt like we're all just human, and that
Sure.
began to kind of get to me over the years. But in the beginning, like I was like a true believer in like trying to make the world a better place. I thought we were doing the right thing.
Right.
Um,
Because you were following direction.
yeah, following direction, and you believe these people are doing awful things, and then you start to realize that you're doing awful things, like we're doing
Right.
awful things,
Sure. Sure.
like there's this dark military industrial complex, and it does a lot of good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to hate on the U.S. government or the Western world, but it does a lot of darkness, does a lot of bad. And
Sure.
I started to realize that we're harming ourselves. My brothers and sisters that I was doing this with, we're harming ourselves. We're harming civilians that are innocent bystanders, and the enemy, we're harming them and their families, and they're just trying to live their lives just like we are. So
Right.
as time wore on, that wore on me, more and more.
Oh yeah, definitely. I can't even imagine. I I'm wondering how you went from like 12 years, over 100 hours in basically in this like high alert, high stress levels. How did you go from that to coming home with civilians and trying to find some inner peace? How did that start? I can
I
imagine it would be crazy because I mean, even if you have a computer on and you've got a bunch of programs on and you shut it off, you start hearing all the all this circuitry and it's like,
Yeah,
hang on, it doesn't all just shut off.
right.
Like they, and that's basically what's going on. I mean, your brain is completely wired and all these circuits are firing all the time. So you finally have the chance to bring some of these circuits down, but they're still firing. How did you have what did you do to bring those circuits down?
That's a really good way to phrase it, and it's interesting talking to a doctor because I'm not used to talking to a doctor
Oh,
on a show. So, um, yeah, that's a good question. It's insightful because yeah, I came home. I was completely burnt out. Like I was fried basically. And um my wife had been with me all pretty much all that time. She had a very similar job. We actually worked together all those years. So we both came home. We were both very broken, and our brain was still firing, and it
Yeah.
was still searching for the stimuli that didn't exist anymore.
Right.
And like I knew I was broken, and I knew that I needed to heal, but I didn't know how to do that. Um, and so I went to the VA for help, and you know, they determined I had PTSD and anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder and hypervigilance and
Well, sure. I
depression.
mean, if your
Depression.
neurons in your brain has been wiring like
Yeah,
that for so long, of course.
yeah. And I had a really good therapist, and she actually practiced Eastern modalities and mindfulness meditation and hypnotherapy. And um, she explained to me that my brain was biochemically busted. It was the levels of chemicals and the way it fired, and my amygdala and everything was messed up. And they would always ask me every time I'd go to the VA, like, "Are you, addicted to alcohol? Are you addicted to drugs?" And I'm like, "No, I'm addicted to war. Like,
Right. Yeah.
I need war. I need war. Like,
Yeah.
I need send me back. Like, um, because I needed that stimuli that I was missing.
That
Because
stimuli became your normal.
yeah, absolutely. Like helicopters flying over and airplanes taking off, and um, you know, I felt like I had, even though I knew it towards the end that what we were doing was not great, I was good at it. And I also was protecting people. Even though we were doing bad things, we were also protecting ourselves. And so it's complicated, right?
Right.
And I was good at that. And so I would be telling people where to go capture a quote unquote bad guy, or where to drop a bomb, or, you know, I was doing everything I could to do my job as well as I could to keep people safe, because that was our job, was to protect this big giant air base that we were on in Kandahar. And I would, tell whole stacks of aircraft what to do, like 5 or 6 aircraft at a time, and go here and go to this altitude, and look over here, and um so it was just like lit my brain up, right? And so yeah, absent of that, everything was just dull. And like I said, I didn't really know how to heal. Um and I this went on for like 7 years, like
I can imagine.
where I was just lost. Like time helps. Um And my therapist, having taught me a little bit of mindfulness and stuff like that, it helped me. But I was so injured and so broken that I couldn't wrap myself around those modalities she was teaching me. They helped, and I think they helped start things in my brain, in my
Yeah,
mind, and my spirit.
definitely.
But it didn't take as it is yet, at the time. It would take me a long time before it would kind of take hold. And so that was just kind of 7 years of being lost, a lot of crying, a lot of like feeling sorry for myself, a lot of like anger at myself for putting myself through that for so long, and a lot of anger at the US government for putting me through that for so long, and um not helping me at times when I think it could have, you know.
Right.
Because I had a top secret security clearance, so we were actually discouraged from getting help. We were discouraged from getting mental help. Um because we had a security clearance, and they didn't want us talking to anybody. They've since kind of reformed that over the last 10 or 20 years. But um and then one day, you know on down the line, I finally had this moment where I was like, you know what, I'm so invested in what happened to me in the past. I'm so invested in this thing that's coming up tomorrow or next week or the next month, and I'm worried about it. I'm worried about money, I'm worried about security and all these things. I finally was like, you know what, I don't care anymore. And I kind of surrendered. And it wasn't, at the time, this wasn't like an overtly spiritual thing to me. It was, I didn't know it, right?
Right.
Um, but I completely surrendered. I was like, you know what? I don't care what happens tomorrow. I don't care what happened yesterday. I just don't care. Like, I want to live, and that's about it. Um,
Yeah.
and so this great surrender, which to me at the time was just kind of logical, because I was at the end of my rope as it is.
Right.
Um,
This is after 7 year. This is that seventh year, right about in
yeah,
that
being
time.
back and being, yeah, maybe somewhere in there, maybe 6 or 7. And that made a huge difference in my life. I wasn't healed, but I was a lot more healed than I had been. And I don't think I would have been able to get to where I am today if I hadn't had that surrender. And then about almost 3 years ago now, 2.5, 3 years ago now, I had kind of this moment of like spiritual awakening, or I call it understanding or clarity of like the universe. Like it was this, it was a sudden lightning bolt kind of situation late at night. My wife was asleep. I was just sitting in bed and I felt this oneness with the universe. I felt like I knew what my higher purpose was. I felt like it was all this very loving kindness kind of
Hmm.
knowledge, and changed my life. I knew what I wanted to do with my life and every day, and I wanted to help people help themselves and have conversations like we're having today. Um and I knew I wanted to start something that could help people, and that's really what transformed me into kind of the spiritualist that I am today.
And so thanks for sharing all that. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
And so when you had this type of awakening and your wife was asleep and you started, I guess, getting downloads, if you want to say it that way,
sure.
I'm feeling that, I mean, there must have been something where you were open to receive some type of message at that time. Like you were less blocked.
Yeah, I
And
think
were you
that
were
goes.
you asking questions, I wonder? Were you like praying? Were you asking questions? Hey, I need an answer. Hey, what's going on? Or was it literally just surrendering to like, hey, all I know is that I want to live and that's it, which is important. That's
It
not like
is
coming from a depressive state. You didn't say, I
sure,
don't care about this. I don't care about my life ever. You
right.
said, I'm done worrying. I'm done worrying about the past, or the future. All I want to do is live. And that is true surrender to divine. You want to live. There's a positive shift there. Was that the shift? And was that the moment where things started to open up for you?
I think so. I think it was the ultimate final surrender, I think. And I wasn't on a spiritual path. I wasn't reading spiritual stuff. I wasn't focused on anything. So it wasn't that I was overtly searching. So this, for me, this was completely out of the blue. Like for me. Um and I had this, as this happened, I had this profound sense of that we're all saying the same thing, even if we're looking at it from different perspectives. So whether you're a Christian or a Muslim or a New Age spiritualist or a Buddhist or a Hindu, it didn't matter. An atheist or scientist, even, that we're all saying very similar things.
Yeah.
And we're just looking at it from very different perspectives, and we're using different vocabulary, um and that was part of it. So yeah, it was completely unexpected. I wasn't studying anything spiritual. I would have described myself. I had kind of lost. I was raised Southern Baptist, um, but I never really cared for the church. Um, too evangelical, too fundamental for me. And so in the military, I kind of lost God because I was too busy for God. I was
Sure. Yeah.
I didn't have time for God, so I was probably just an agnostic at that time. And then when
Well,
I
because
came
you didn't have
home,
time for yourself.
no, I didn't have any time for myself,
Right.
and self is God, right? So
Yeah.
um So when I came home, I was still kind of an agnostic. My sister was a spiritualist. And my wife had some spiritual leanings, but for me, no, I hadn't.
And so then you get this message, you're laying in bed and it's telling you you're starting to see the oneness and you're starting to have some type of hope and feeling that now you wanted to start to connect with people or you wanted to start helping people. And did you know at that moment, I mean, was it clear at that moment? Was it just becoming clear as to how you were going to start this connection and how you were going to start to help people?
I knew I wanted to start some type of like online spiritual community where people could kind of share their stories and connect with each other in a very like universalist sort of way, regardless of what you believe in, like come one,
Yeah.
come all, where people will be empowered within themselves to believe in what they need to believe in or what they want to believe in or what they should believe in, um, regardless of what I said or someone else said. But maybe we could help inform each other's paths a little bit through sharing our journeys. So I knew I wanted a place where I could make that happen. So yeah, that came to me in the same moment.
That's really profound. And so then you finally have this realization, this awakening. Okay, I want to start this online community. I want people to come together, people to share their stories. How did all that start to unravel? How did it unfold?
That was the most interesting part for me because since I wasn't a spiritualist before this, I wasn't reading spiritual stuff. I was semi-educated. I had some knowledge of world religion. I had some knowledge of culture from traveling the world, but I didn't know spirituality. I didn't know religion in like a way where I could talk about it. So I said to myself, you've had this thing happen to you and you have this universal knowledge, but I need to be able to speak the language of other people
Right.
so that I can have conversations about it. So
Yeah.
I went and studied religion, world religion. I went and studied from the major world religions to indigenous religions and everything in between, philosophy, self-help, um, spirit, new age spirituality, going back to the 1800s and its journey through now, and I would read a book on Hinduism. I would read a book on one of the Abrahamic faiths. I would read a book on Eastern faith, Tao or Buddhism, and read a couple of philosophy books. I'd read, and then I would kind of like loop back around and just keep doing that. Read a self-help book,
Yeah.
and I think I read 60 books in 4 months. And
Oh my God.
I took notes,
Wow.
taking all these notes, and
Yeah.
I was studying.
Yes.
I put myself to work for, um, and that's all I did was just completely enmesh myself into this learning so that I could talk to people. And I was also doing stuff like, okay, how do I start a spiritual community online? How do I start a nonprofit? How do I, you know, what community structure do I use? What website? What like um all the administrative and technical stuff. I
Oh
started to
yeah.
learn that too. So I was doing that kind of
Yeah.
in tandem with learning. Um and I went and became a certified life coach too, just to be professional in that kind of thing. So just I was just doing stuff to learn and educate myself and prepare myself to come and try to, be this person who could hopefully help people out.
That's really incredible. So you actually, what I, what I'm feeling from this is you took that energy that you were used to in war, which is high alert,
Yeah.
and kind of like transformed that into high alert spirituality. Like that
Yeah.
high energy that you had, it's like it transmuted into a different path, and that's why you're able to be so studious and read so many books in 4 months and just go right into it as hard as you did. And so,
Yes.
wow, that's really amazing. So then you finally decided to Kishar, how did you come up with that? How did it become Kishar Community?
I thought my wife and we thought a lot about the name. Names are so important, right? And you want a good name, something that represents who you are and what you're all about. You want something that is also not taken, which is also hard. So,
Right.
through
Yeah,
all
I
of
know
that,
that is hard.
um, we went all the way back to Samaria and we found the Sumerian goddess of Mother Earth, which is Kishar. She's Gaia. And, um, the word also Kishar also translates not just Mother Earth, but and the goddess, but also translates into kind of like the light on the horizon.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
yeah, which is like the journey, right, that we're on. So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
so that's how we
Following
got
that
to
light.
that.
I love it. And so in your community group, I mean, I'm based on your profile that I was looking at, there's some topics here, know and live your higher purpose. This is something that you talk about within your group, within the community.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
how do you work through this, or somebody comes to you and they're like, John, I'm not really sure what my higher purpose is, because I'm assuming right now what I'm feeling from you is that you are definitely in your higher purpose.
yes. I feel like I'm in my higher purpose. I had that knowledge when I kind of had my moment, and I kind of look at it like Hindu Dharma, like are we living our higher purpose, like, and I feel like each of us has our own unique higher purpose or dharma here on
Yeah,
on, on
definitely.
in this universe, right? Like, and it's probably unique to each of us. It can shift through our lives. I think it can change. Um,
Yes.
and so and I think some people kind of have an abstract idea of what their higher purpose is.
Right.
Some people don't know. I think even if you don't know it, I think the road to figure it out is not too long. So I work with people, and we work with people to kind of figure that out. And so a lot of times I ask people like, okay, so like, what's that thing that, when you're going to do something the next day and the night before, you can't wait to go to sleep and do it. Like, what's that thing? Like
Thing
what's
that
that thing?
excites you.
Yeah, exactly. You talked about it in the introduction to the show here, like
Yeah.
that thing that gives you joy, that, that you're kind of like attached to in the best sort of way, not a negative sort of way, that you're like connected to, that when you're doing it, you're in the flow with the universe. You're like in a rhythm of the universe. Like that's your higher purpose. That's your dharma. And so part of it is about figuring out what your higher purpose is.
Right.
And there's all these ways we just talked about. There other people might kind of know what lights you up. So you can actually ask other people, hey, what lights me up? What do you think lights me up? But you're going to know it within yourself. But then once you have an idea of what your dharma or your higher purpose is, it doesn't start. That's just the easy part. The hard part, sometimes I think in our current society, is like, how do I live that purpose each day? How do I
Yeah.
how do I use that and go live that in my life? Like, is my job compatible with my higher purpose? And if not, is that okay? Because my job gives me time to do my higher purpose outside of work. Maybe that's okay.
Right.
Maybe it's a balance. We don't know. Like,
Yes.
it's complicated.
It is.
And so are you living your higher purpose each day though? And if it,
Or
and
even
that's
just
me.
like a portion of it.
Exactly. How are you aligning your higher purpose with your life that you're living?
And if because I mean, just from me personally, I mean, we can all have our down days. What do you tell people in the community when they're having like their down days and they're just not feeling on purpose that that day or that week or that month? How can someone get back on their purpose? Let's say they discovered it and then they just have like this shitty month.
Yeah. I think dealing with those downtimes that's the heavy lifting of spirituality. I think, like, what keeps us centered and grounded, so that when we have these downtimes, we don't completely drift away or get covered up or overwhelmed. And we all go through that. We all have these times in life that get difficult, they get chaotic, they get sad. It could be any number of
Yeah.
emotions or feelings that we attribute it to it. And so really it's I believe, like, how are we grounded so that we don't lose sight of why we're living our life? Like, and that's, there's spiritual grounding, there's rituals like meditation, there's journaling, there's talking to someone, um
Or
talking to
even just going
yourself.
for a walk in nature somewhere.
And that's very meditative, right? That's very
Yeah.
zen. So there's that stuff. There's our health and wellness, whether it's our nutrition and our diet, or moving around, intentional movement, and moving our bodies, and taking care of ourselves. There's that, that sleeping right. Are we, the first
Yes.
thing the VA asks me when they see me is,
How are
how
you
are you
sleeping?
sleeping? Yeah. And you know that because you're a doctor. Um, and it's so important. So these lifestyle things and our spiritual things, and that alignment of mind, body, soul, and being centered and being grounded, and not allow us to not lose sight of why we do what we do. So when we have these times of chaos, when we have these times of sadness or darkness, we don't lose sight of the light. We don't lose sight of the fact that we always have light within us, and we don't let it overwhelm us. And when it does overwhelm us, there's an element of grace that you have to have for yourself, and say, okay, it's okay that you're a little overwhelmed right now.
Definitely a moment of grace. And I think that gets
Yeah.
challenging, especially for people that are on the go, 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 to have that moment of grace.
Yeah, we're not, our society doesn't teach people to love themselves. Our society teaches us to be the hero for someone else, to help our community, to help our children, our spouse. But our society very rarely teaches us to help ourselves and love ourselves. So having that grace for yourself, having that ability to look at ourselves and take care of ourselves first, because if we don't do that, we're less for everyone else. We're less whole. We're less of everything if we don't take care of ourselves.
We
first.
don't take care of ourselves, we're doing a disservice to humanity.
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely. So then you also talk about understanding the stream of unconsciousness. How do you help people? First of all, people listening to the first time, like, what is unconsciousness?
For me, like the stream of unconsciousness is that conveyor belt that society will put you on that says, from the time you're a kid, you have to do this and you can't do that. And you've got to do, you got to go to college and you got to get this degree and you've got to, or get this job and you got to get married and you got to have kids. It's that conveyor belt of society that society wants to put us on, that rubber stamps everything and sends us down this like very specific path that they think we should be on. And then they make us think that we should be on it. And I think for me, that's the stream of unconsciousness. It's the fact that we end up living a story that isn't our own. We're living this story that's being written by our parents or our teachers or our coworkers or our friends, but it's not being written by ourselves.
I love that, because when I read stream of unconsciousness, I had a whole totally different idea, but the way that you're describing it now totally makes sense. So when people start to understand, like, are you living your life for you? Are you being authentic to what brings
Right.
you joy? Or are you doing this because society wants you to do this and this is the next thing to check off
Right.
their list, not your list, their list. And if you're
That's right.
living for others, how will you be fruitful in that point, at that point, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's really amazing. The stream of unconsciousness that everybody's on, most of the people are on. They're not even know that they're programmed, like automatically programmed to shop
Right.
here at this store, buy these shoes because everyone's buying it, and it just kind of becomes like we become
Yeah.
manufactured.
Exactly. And the beauty of the stream of unconsciousness actually is it's not that deep. So all you gotta do is stand up. Suddenly you're not floating down it anymore where you're told you had to. And you look around and there's all this like stuff that you never looked at before. So what do I
Yeah,
believe? What do I want? What do I need? Who am I? Outside of this societal construct that I've been given. And you start to see things in a totally different set of colors, and it's amazing perspective.
I can also feel that this is definitely something you went through yourself, being in war all the time. I mean, the talk about stream of unconsciousness at that time. It's like they're controlling their consciousness. And when you finally had control of your own consciousness, how were you able to go inward and start living for you and know that it's okay to do things for you and that you don't have to be defending everyone else around you? At this point, it's not a defense anymore. How do you convert defense to love?
Yeah, I think I always thought of myself from the time I was a kid as a kind of a rebel, right? But at the same time, I was still doing a lot of the stuff that society wanted me to do. And then when I got in the military and I was in that big military industrial complex, I was doing what it wanted me to do. And even within that, I thought I was a rebel, and I kind of was, but I was still doing what the system wanted me to do.
Right.
So coming home from that and realizing that there's this whole other free will out there for me, that I can do anything. I can do whatever I decide to do, and it doesn't have to look like anything that I was told that it would look like. And like, there's options. There's so many other options on the way that I could live my life than what I had been told and what I had been, given by society. So yeah, it's about realizing that you're empowered within yourself spiritually, yes, but practically as well. Like, we can go out and make decisions out in the real world, in this concrete world that we share with everybody else, that benefit us and are what we absolutely want to do. And we just have to go do it. And that every moment of every single day is a choice. And
Every moment of every single day is definitely a choice. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. And we abdicate that choice, and we don't
Right.
have to.
Something you said right now that's like I'm thinking, well, aside from your awesome quote of every moment of every single day is a choice. So right now you said the word rebel. And I
Yeah.
thought, it's interesting because I'm thinking now rebel actually has a different meaning to it. So at first, when you said rebel, I thought, well, yeah, I guess, people are rebel when they're not following society norms or, I'm being a rebel. But the true rebel is when you're rebelling against your true nature.
Yeah.
So actually, it's not a rebel unless you are not following your internal guidance system, your own North Star. Then you are being a true rebel at that point.
Yeah. By following exactly who you are and becoming who you're meant to be within yourself. Yeah, that is, you're completely rebelling against society and you're completely embracing who you are, like your true self. Like,
Yeah.
um, and deciding that you're in charge of everything in your life.
Hmm. Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's how you learn to let go and achieve freedom.
Yeah, and I think letting go, we talked about surrender earlier in the beginning
Yeah.
of the episode, but letting go is this process. It's like it's not something you just declare and it happens.
Right.
It's
Yeah. I'm letting go from now on. Like,
yeah,
all right, let's
yeah.
orchestrate everything magically.
'Cause that's not how your mind and ego work, right? So like they want to hold on to things. And so you have to check back in with yourself and you say, have I actually let go of this thing?
Yeah.
And then you have to let go of it. And sometimes you have to let go of it again and let go of it again. And then eventually it's eventually, you're not as attached to it. And part of letting go isn't just saying I'm letting go of this thing. It's no longer a part of who I am. There's a level of acceptance of I've let go of this, yet I know it's still in me, part of me, and that's okay. So there's a level of acceptance, I think, in letting go that you have to have because, like, I'm never going to be the person that wasn't who I was, that was at war and that had all these scars
Plus, it
and
took
all that.
that person to bring you to where you're at today.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah. And then that's also where grace comes in, as you were talking about grace earlier. That's also grace of who you've been and not
Yeah,
withdrawing from that person.
and that's forgiveness of self
Yeah.
as well. Like all these decisions that you made that you're holding against you. Like how's that ever going to resolve itself? Like you just have to accept and forgive yourself and say like I made these decisions. I could have not gone to this place or not taken that job or I could have not spent all this money on X, Y, or Z. But at the end of the day, you can't go back and undo that.
Right.
You just got to
Definitely.
forgive yourself for it.
And forgiveness is freedom. And they both start with the letter F, which is amazing.
Absolutely.
Forgiveness, freedom, and three syllables. Hey, follow the F word.
Always.
Oh, yeah, right. In so many different ways, too. Hey, so let's go back to talking about flow state. Earlier, we were talking about going with the flow of nature, the flow of life, and when you go with the flow, basically, that's where you kind of start to find joy. How does someone know if they're in flow state?
Is it easy? Like, is it this thing that just kind of happens and you're like, oh, this is great. Like I'm motivated. I have energy. I want to be here. I want to do this. I don't really care about what time it is or how fast or slow time is
Yes,
passing. Um, and like you're kind of invested in it in the best way. You're not overly invested because of fear or
right.
anxiety or even anticipation in a good way. You're just there. So it's not there's the bad stuff like fear and anxiety, but there's also anticipation, which can be kind of have a more positive connotation to it sometimes. But like, don't be attached to either one of those sides. Just be there in the moment, which we talk about a lot in the spiritual realm, but it's cliche for a reason. Like, am
Exactly.
I am I letting go of the past? Am I unattached to the future? And am I just enjoying today? Like now. I think that's flow.
That is definitely flow. And that's okay that some things are cliche. I know a lot of people
Yeah.
will say like, "Well, I've heard this," or "This is a fad." That's actually a good thing because this is positive fad to go to be on. This is a positive vibrational shift for yourself and for the world if this is the fad that's going on being in the present moment. If that's cliche, well then that's the best cliche there is right now, honestly.
Yeah. And it's the thing is I think when you look at like alignment of mind, body, soul, you look at spirituality and the path of the journey. Like it sounds easy. Like, it sounds hard, and then you can look at it and break it down and dissect and be like, "Oh, that's not that hard. That's easy." But right, the hard part is getting through that distance through yourself. Like in theory, getting through this distance of yourself, the blockage, because the block is usually within us, right? It's
Yes.
not, it's very rarely, the block is hardly, it's never outside of us. I mean, occasionally there's some complications, but mostly the block is usually within us. And if that's the case, well, that shouldn't be that hard because it's just inside of me. But there can be a great distance that you have to travel through you to get to where you need to go. And that's okay. I think we have accepting that it takes work is part of it, that this getting to that flow state may take some work. That's
Yeah.
harder than just the flow state, so it's about putting the work into yourself to understand well, I don't know what to call it, the meaning of life or the universe or the divine or self with a capital S, or we call it a lot of different things, right?
John, I love what you said right now. You said it's just keeps permeating my brain. You said to create the space, I mean to create the distance for yourself, within yourself. And when you said that, I realized when you create distance for yourself, within yourself, you create space. And that space is allowance. And that's where things manifest, and that's where there's flow, and that's why there's more energy that can go, because you've created this distance, which created more space between you and what was holding you from what you were hoping to achieve or receive. That's
Right.
really amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about and if we just approach things with awareness and intention, really good things happen.
Definitely. How does somebody get aware? How does someone start to become aware? Someone that
That's a
doesn't even know what that means.
I love talking about awareness because it's funny. Like, how do you be aware to be aware?
I
Like,
know.
it's a
Yeah. How do you become aware to be aware? Yeah.
it becomes a very meta conversation, right?
Sure.
But I like for me, like as I'm talking to you right now, like I'm holding like a palm stone.
Hmm.
It's like tiger iron, and I have my mala beads, my Hindu mala beads that you know I carry, and so it
Yeah.
can be something physical.
I'm holding Jasper.
I got you. Okay, so it can be something physical that you hold on to or that you see. So it can be something you hold on to. It can be something you carry with you. It could be something that you have on your desk or on a bedside table. But there should be something that causes us to remember why we're doing what we do or why being aware is a good thing. And so we have to have something that causes, we don't have to, but it's better, I think. It's
It's
going to
good
be
practice
unique to each individual
to stay in
person.
your alignment.
Yeah, to say, how do I be aware to remember to be aware? And it's usually something physical. It's why whether it's the Hindus or the Buddhists or the Catholics, the Muslims, there's prayer beads throughout every major world religion and spiritual
Right. Every
construct
culture has prayer beads. That's correct.
because that's awareness. It's about awareness. It's about remembering that thing that you want to be tied to, whether it's the divine or the self within. It's all the same thing to me, but like being connected to that, being reminded of that, being aware that, in addition to that connection to the universe or the divine, they can also remind you something very practical. Oh, my goal is to get to here, or I need to do this today, or I need to eat better, I need to sleep better, I need to meditate. Whatever it is, it can be that connection to the universe and the divine, or it can be that thing that keeps you connected to that thing.
I love it. And that's why I also have crystals and
Yeah.
beads and stuff, because of that connection. Because it's I mean it's also we have to make sure that we stay grounded, as we were talking about earlier. And these are things that are provided from earth that are also divinely guided. It's like they're stones given to us. They're sacred. It's part of our sacred journey.
Right.
And so if you get to it, whether it's a crystal or a beaded bracelet or a necklace, it's a reminder to keep yourself in your mind, body, soul, and spirit connection with one. And
Yeah,
that's the intention behind it, and that's the intention you're going to give it. That's where you're going to go.
absolutely.
Well, hey, all right, one last question. So what gets you to stay grounded? Let's say you're having an off day or an off month. How do you realign yourself?
for me, that kind of goes a little bit back to our higher purpose conversation. If my higher purpose is to kind of help people help themselves and provide an opportunity for people to have that chance, then, and that's what I love to do and what I want to do with my life, then how do I make that happen and how do I stay connected to that? And so when I get overwhelmed, when I get in chaos, it's really, that's what grounds me is I have a purpose and I love that. I'm lucky to have that. I'm lucky. I'm also blessed to have the means to carry on that journey. And so it's gratitude, I think, as well.
Oh yeah,
It's
definitely gratitude.
it's knowing what my purpose is and having gratitude that I have the opportunity to live that life.
Gratitude is the recipe to receive more of that of what you are
Yeah, it really
grateful for.
is. Yeah, it's like Cheryl Crow says in "Soak Up the Sun," right? It's not
Yeah.
having what you want; it's wanting what you've got, right? It's
Yeah.
that
I
line.
wanna soak up the sun.
So,
I
yeah.
love that. Hey, so I have a poem for you. I wrote this just reading into your story, so thank you for the inspiration. I'm gonna go ahead and read that
Oh, it's
for
beautiful. Okay.
John Lawyer here. Here it goes. I thought I'd seen it all. War against war, man against man, survival against survival. I thought I'd seen it all. Until one day I took it. I took a fall deep within, for I had not yet seen peace. And peace found me, as it has always been within me. And so I opened myself towards a newfound path, and a bright light emerged to quench my thirst, just as deserts crave the rain. And so now I hold your hand through it. And that's it.
I love that. I love it. Could you email that to me?
Absolutely. I'll do it right
Yeah,
when we're done. I'll
yeah,
definitely
absolutely.
send that to you. And yeah, I'll send that to you. Thank you so much. I really
No,
appreciate
that's
your
beautiful.
energy.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much. It's really amazing. I mean, it's almost hard to believe that you were, I mean, in war for so long and doing this for 12 years because you have a very peaceful Buddha-like presence. I mean, you're very calm and very monk-like, and so it's really it's encouraging, it's motivating, and especially for a lot of war veterans out there. Keep speaking up, keep your community going, and keep sharing your light. It's going to definitely open up the opportunity for other people to do the same for themselves. And so, I mean, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. How can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners find the Kishar community and get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, thank you so much too for what you're doing. I love the message that you're putting out into the world.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. I love it. Thank you, John.
For us, we're at kishar.org. It's KISHAR.org. That's our main website. And we have monthly memberships, nonprofit, all the funds go back into supporting the community. We also have a YouTube channel called Peace on Your Journey on YouTube.
Oh, I love that. Peace on your journey on YouTube.
Yeah. And it has what we want to do is just put videos out there that everyone can access that talk about living a more peaceful and grounded life and in a practical way in the real world that we all kind of share every day. So check out our website, check out our YouTube channel, hit us up on socials linked from our website, and we'll connect.
It's been amazing here with John Lawyer, and he talked about the Kishar community that he has a nonprofit organization. It's a Kishar Spiritual Community where people can share their higher purpose or where to find their higher purpose, how to achieve freedom, and how to come into an alignment of mind, body, and soul connection. Thank you so much for being on A Little Less Fear podcast, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Same.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to A Little Less Fear podcast. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends and your family about A Little Less Fear podcast. And if you are interested in being on my show, feel free to leave me an email at alittlelessfear@gmail.com. Or if you have any questions or comments and you also want to leave me an additional message, you can also do so from my website, leaving an inquiry at www.alittlelessfear.com. You can get a copy of my book on Amazon, Amazon Kindle, and Amazon Kindle Unlimited, also titled A Little Less Fear. And thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate all the support. Leave me a review if you get a chance. I love to receive feedback, questions, and comments. And any way that I can be of support to you, please let me know. Thank you so much. I love you. Wishing you love, light, happiness, and many blessings your way.